Welcome to this week's Business Transformation 101 podcast. I'm your host, Bill Fegis, and in this podcast, we will discuss the potential pitfalls in developing strategic plans. Long-term planning was the topic in Volume 9 of this series, and we discussed the three components that make up effective long-term or strategic planning. Those include strategy creation, strategic planning, and strategy execution or strategy deployment. These are difficult, complex processes to implement effectively and have a high impact on the long-term success of the business. This podcast highlights some of the potential pitfalls that teams can fall into while creating and deploying strategic plans. Hopefully your team can learn from the experience is summarized in this podcast and avoid some, if not all, these pitfalls when developing and implementing your strategic plan. Let's discuss potential pitfalls that can be grouped into 7 categories. The first category is less is more. Focus is extremely important to create and implement an effective strategy. The team should determine the critical few, that's 1 to 3, strategic initiatives that will transform the future of the business. The team should also initially diverge in the creation process to explore a wide range of options, but then must converge down to the critical few. Ensure everyone is aligned on the critical few strategy initiatives. Utilize strategy deployment to align everyone and communicate the critical few. Be vigilant to ensure that there are no stealth initiatives being pursued. There's an interesting article on Bloomberg.com by Andreas Kluth discussing how less can be more. The article is entitled "Science Shows Why Simplifying is Hard and Complicating is Easy." The article notes that, quote, "Our brains appear hardwired to add stuff rather than take things away. That explains a lot about the messes we keep making," close quote. The second category is knowledge is power. When building a strategy, there are many unknowns and many assumptions. Ensure the team works to convert the unknowns and assumptions to knowledge as much as possible. On the other hand, do not wait until knowledge is 100%. Better to charge ahead with imperfect information than to sit on your hands awaiting perfect information. Go to Gemba is the third category. Get VOC or voice of the customer by going to Gemba, which is the place where the work is done. Go to the customer's facility. See how the product service is used by the customer in production and how it impacts the end application. Get VOCC, voice of the customer's customer, whenever possible, since it can provide insights that are missed or filtered by the customer. During strategy deployment, go to Gemba to review progress on action plans where the action is actually taking place. The next category is process is important. Lack of a robust long-term planning process, including strategy creation, strategic planning, and strategy deployment, will significantly reduce the chances of implementing a successful strategy. A winning strategy cannot be created by the leadership team going off to a cave for 3 days and returning with a strategic plan. Strategic planning needs to be a year-round process, not a one-month event. The team should be developing and testing components of the strategy every week, culminating in the consolidation into a coherent strategic plan once a year. Make dot collecting a part of the team's strategic work. The team needs to be collecting dots continuously to build a sea of dots that can stimulate connecting the dots in a manner to create new, innovative initiatives and breakthroughs. Note that dot collecting can be in any areas and does not have to be directly related to the business. Avoid the next phone call strategy. Look at the hottest thing, great new idea, or fad with a critical eye. Is it a sustainable, differentiated strategy, or just a flash in the pan? The fifth category is multiple heads are better than one. Strategy should be built by the team, not handed down from the top. Engage as many minds as possible in dot collecting and development of the strategic information. The more brains involved, the better the ideas. Execution becomes infinitely easier when the entire team has had a part in crafting the strategy, so they are aligned and have a shared vision. Geographic expansion is not a panacea, is the sixth category. Many strategic plans include geographic expansion. Drill down on these initiatives to understand the soundness of the reasoning for their inclusion. If a business has a domestic market share of 20% or less, the probability of successfully expanding domestic market share is much higher than attempting to greenfield the business in a new geography that has cultural, language, communications, management, and distance challenges, in addition to the need for different products or services for potentially a different set of customers. The final category includes miscellaneous pitfalls. SWOT, or strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats, is a current state description, not a strategy. Participation is critical for all team members. Make sure you moderate the extroverts and draw out the introverts. Digitization is currently a big buzzword. Digital is not a strategy, rather it is a tool for executing a well-crafted strategy. The development and implementation of long-term strategic planning is a complex and critically important process for the future success of a business. It is best done as a team sport, including the inputs and insights of a wide segment of employees based upon information they compile from customers, competitors, suppliers, and a steeple analysis, steeple meaning social, technological, economic, environmental, political, legal, and ethical trends of the external environment. While strategic planning is complex, it is important for the team to focus and simplify to arrive at a plan that can be effectively communicated and executed. It is better to flawlessly execute a single strategic initiative than poorly execute a half dozen initiatives. It is also important to follow a process in both creating the strategy and executing the strategy. In summary, use a process, take a team approach, live the process year-round, collect dots, visit customers and users, convert as many assumptions as possible to knowledge, keep it simple, and finally execute. In the interest of continuous improvement, I invite feedback from our listeners. Please share your thoughts and ideas on these weekly podcasts, and feel free to suggest topics which you believe would provide useful information for you and our listeners. Thank you for listening to this week's podcast, and please join us next week when we discuss lean accounting.